but don't get distracted. Hello and welcome to the second LinkedIn Live for today for me. I know it's a little bit of an overload on a Friday of time with me, so hopefully you can all deal with that. I'd like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land that I live, work and play on, and also play sport on, which is the land of the Wadawurrung people. And I want to pay my respects to their elders past and present, and also, as always, a huge big call out to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders who are watching us live or on the replay. It always was and always will be Aboriginal land. What a controversial topic we get to talk about today. When I saw this media storm of the Manly rugby team, we'll talk about the issue itself in a second. I saw this come up and my first thought was, what did Pride Cup have to say about this? James so kindly has agreed to come on and have a chat to us about this topic on his first day back from leave. So I want to acknowledge how grateful I am that you've agreed to come on and have this chat. Please, as always, if you have comments, questions, put them in. We'll get to them if we can. And if it makes sense to, and if not, we'll definitely jump on and answer afterwards. And even if you're watching the replay, stick your comments and your questions in there and we'll engage in the conversation in that way. So firstly, let's keep to tradition in these LinkedIn Lives that I do. I always ask the guests to introduce themselves, mainly because I'm too lazy to read bios. But secondly, because I really think, the diversity and inclusion space is all about sharing stories. And what I'd really love you to do, James, is introduce yourself through story, how you ended up in this space, what's your connection to the topic. I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you so much, Bree. And firstly, just need to correct one thing. I'm not back at work till Monday. So for anybody whose emails I haven't replied to, don't think I'm back. I'll get back to you on Monday. But thank you so much for having me. And thank you for all the work you've done behind the scenes over the last few years, but especially with us over the last year and a half. Especially with what you did with the Geelong Pride Cup, it was so incredible to see, and being at that event was still one of the highlights of my year, and I can't wait to see how it grows every year. And sorry for all the work that I know you put into it, and congratulations to all the other people who worked on that.
Yeah, but Jen Walsh gets that high five.
Good on Jen. But for me, I started out as a counsellor for young LGBTI people. So I really fell in a niche after uni. I had become a counsellor and I fell into this kind of niche of working with LGBTI young people across specifically regional and rural areas. I was really bringing myself on road shows around those areas and getting to speak to youth groups around what it meant to be LGBTI, about my own coming out story, and about the fact that I was fully accepted by my family and friends for being who I was. But schooling situations and sporting situations were the one place that I could never truly be myself. And the more I spoke to LGBTI young people across the country, the more and more I heard the same story that I had. And I was shocked that at that stage, we're talking almost a decade ago, nobody was doing anything about it. These stories were coming up more and more often. And my partner at the time, Ryan Storr, who was the co-founder of Proud to Play, and I, we put our heads together, and at one stage we were like, what can we do? We'll help out wherever we can. And we were both talking to a few young people, and one young person said, I don't play sport, I'm gay. And it was that relationship between somebody's sexuality and the sporting life that really got us. And we're like, no, this can't be the mentality that's going around our community. It's really the mentality that's going around the wider community. Let's not let it seep into our community. So we wanted to do something about it. Using my own story and narrative of not being involved in sport, not feeling safe or comfortable, and the reasons why were because of homophobia and homophobic comments. So using that as the starting basis to start Proud to Play. And that was almost 9 years ago. And from there, I had 5 extremely amazing years at Proud to Play, and then was asked to move over to Pride Cup at a time where I really wanted to try something different and try something new and start getting out of the policy space and more into the celebration space. And I think I'm in my 3rd or 4th year at Pride Cup now, and have watched us grow from one activation in 2015 to now I think we just reached our 315th club. So we've had a pretty awesome growth, and a lot of that has been due to the clubs and the environment that they've created.
That's so amazing, isn't it? From 1 to 315. And it's still like there's still so much more growth there, right? In terms of the clubs that just haven't started to tackle this issue at all. And yes, a big shout out to your organisation in terms of how you do support clubs kind of move into that space, because it's not easy. And we've seen that the ultimate ramifications of perhaps not being as thoughtful as we possibly could in when it comes to inclusion initiatives in the Manly event that has occurred over the last couple of weeks. So let me maybe paint a picture for those who haven't been who have managed to hide their heads in the sand and avoid the media storm that has been created about this. But essentially, and this is from what I'm reading and what I've gathered, the Manly Rugby League Club decided to put together an inclusivity jumper. And it wasn't ever specifically a pride jumper, which I think is an interesting point too, but they did use a rainbow. And so that's why I think we end up where we are. And from all reports, it appears that that jumper was advertised in the media by a couple of players wearing it, and that's how some of the other players who were expected to wear it found out about it. And they had some issues with that jumper and wearing that jumper, and 7 players of the Manly Sea Eagles decided to not play that game where the jumper was required. The Manly club did come out, the coach came out and apologised for the lack of consultation with players about it, but also held their position quite strongly that they were an inclusive club and that they would proceed with the wearing of the jumper. The game happened. The Sea Eagles lost, is my understanding. Those players did sit out. And the latest news today is that those players have said that with actual consultation and engagement, that they would be prepared to participate in a Pride match that would happen next year. So that's kind of a really short summary of what we've seen. The commentary that's occurred has been quite incredible in terms of its volume. And also we've seen some really hurtful and disgusting comments come out, which is what unfortunately you expect with these things. We've also seen some really well considered article, and there was a great article yesterday reflecting on the Pacifica culture and what it was before colonisation and what it is now, and the implications that those players would face being part of that culture and wearing potentially a pride jumper. So that's just in a nutshell what I've gathered from it. James, I want to throw straight over to you. I don't know, I was thinking about what question I should start with here. But I guess for me, hearing from you in your words, what went wrong and how could they have done this differently?
Yeah, look, there's one word that I've been using over the last 5 days since we heard about this, and it's consultation. Realistically, the club did not consult with the relevant associations, organisations who are here to help. It's what we do at Pride Cup. It's our bread and butter. We run or help run these LGBTI activations, but the thing is, we start them 2 years in advance with elite level clubs. And we have a pipeline of clubs coming through who are going to run Pride rounds. I'm not going to tell you who they are, who are going to run Pride rounds or Pride Cups or Pride games that have started this process years and years ago. And it's because in order to get this right, and in order to not look tokenistic and not be tokenistic, you need to ensure that you're consulting with all stakeholders. And this is where the problem was. A stakeholder is not just the CEO of an organization. The CEO might be the voice or might be the person who's making the decisions, but your players are your biggest stakeholders. Your captains, in a lot of the situations, have the most say within a sporting league or club because they're the most well-renowned, they're the most looked up to, and they're the most followed in those groups. So when you're not incorporating your initiatives with your captains, with your players, even with your volunteers who are there to help you, they're going to feel offside. And when somebody already feels offside, it's going to be a lot harder to get them back onto your side. 99.9% of the time with what we do at Pride Cup, and like I said, more than 315 games across every single state and territory in Australia, involving people from every single culture you could possibly think of, and a lot of the intersections that make our community so special a part of that. We've only ever had a handful of people not come to the game because they didn't want to wear the jersey or because they didn't respect the game or the feeling behind it. The reason that is because when education is key, when education is your first step into the environment, you start understanding why you're there, what you're doing, and what that rainbow jumper means. I'm going to go on a tangent now, Bree. Sorry, but the rainbow is so much more than just that strip on the Manly jersey. The rainbow, the thing that I love the most of what we do at Pride Cup is seeing the rainbow in the place that you think it does not exist. Seeing it in the middle of a sporting field, in the middle of Wagga Wagga, in the middle of wherever we are, wherever we're playing that weekend, of hanging that rainbow there, center point of a field, of a stadium, even when we recently did the Adelaide United Pride game, the first doubleheader Pride game in A-League's history, when we had that, seeing the rainbows all around Cooper Stadium for the very first time, and feeling that sense of welcome that you'd never feel otherwise. And for those watching who don't understand why the LGBTI community is so entrenched or so attached to this rainbow, I liken it to your favorite sporting club's jersey. This is a great example of where we currently are, is for me, and I'm a St Kilda fan, and unapologetically a fan of St Kilda and the work that they've done. But when I walk down the street and I'm wearing my St Kilda jersey and I see somebody else in that St Kilda jersey, we always do that little head nod, that little sense of appreciation of we know each other. We could go get a beer together. We could go hang out. We have something in common that we can talk about. And I feel almost the exact same way when I see the rainbow flag. When I see the rainbow on my doctor's office, I feel like I can go in and be open about who I am, talk openly with my doctor about who I am and my love life and the problems that I have. And I feel very similar even going to different medical practitioners or going to sporting clubs. As soon as I see that rainbow flag, it's that first step of acceptance for me where I can go in and feel included. And I don't think the players knew what they were wearing or why. And that's where the first problem was.
Yeah, to me, that's the point as well. And as soon as I saw the news come out, it was that immediate thought that it's not like these 7 players are necessarily bad, staunch homophobes. It's that the awareness and education piece just wasn't there in the first place. And some people may still choose not to wear it, right? Or to not participate. But then if they have the information first, then they can make that choice themselves, can't they, in a more meaningful way?
And look, this may not be everybody's opinion, but my opinion is if we're taking an intersectional approach, we need to be very sensitive about the intersections that make our community so special and so awesome to be in. And when you put that into a sports context, when you put that into a Pacific context, and then when you put that further into a religious context, there's going to be things there where people aren't ready to wear the rainbow uniform, where people aren't ready or don't understand why they're wearing it. And that's why they're pulling out, because they don't have that process before them that gets to know. We work in regional and rural areas where some of our sporting club members have never met somebody from the LGBTI community. And sounds so weird for a lot of us being in metro centres where we're like, what do you mean? Like, everybody's gay in Fitzroy North. Everybody's from the community. But we are working with people who have never met somebody who's from the community. And they don't have that connection or that piece that brings them towards what it means to be part of this community. So then they don't understand why they're doing what they're doing. Why are they running a pride round? Why are they involved in a pride round or an inclusivity round? What does it mean for them? Well, they don't know. So why would they be part of it?
Yeah. And that's when you get those questions, right? Well, what about straight pride? And what's the need for these kind of events and the rainbow washing? And it's that lack of understanding and that sharing of stories. And I think that's what I really appreciate about the Pride Cup process. When it's done properly, is that it is about having conversations with people who perhaps have just never had these conversations before. And I'm interested to hear from you in terms of, we still see, even when people do go, we need education, it's like it's a one-off perhaps 20-minute session. And then they roll into their inclusion initiatives, whether it's in the sporting context or whether it's in a workplace, when we run an unconscious bias training and then we decide everybody's going to wear rainbow lanyards going forward. When we talk about education, what does that really mean?
Yeah, awesome question. So for me and at Pride Cup, there's two parts of education. So we know that a one-off education doesn't do a lot, especially if you're in communities who already know a lot about what you're talking about, or the opposite, when you're in communities who know nothing and they don't really want to hear because they're being forced to be part of this. So firstly, a forced community session doesn't work because people already have their backup. They don't want to be there. They're being forced to be there. So what we do at Pride Cup is twofold. We are an opt-in process, so a club needs to opt in if they want to run a Pride Cup. We never ask them to, we never tell them to, or we never direct them to through another body, be that their national sporting body or a sporting league. They opt in and they say, we want to be part of this. The first step is building a committee and making sure that you have people from a cross section of your club involved and engaged to be part of that process. Because if you don't have a wide range, and we just saw this with Manly, if you don't have a wide range of people from your club part of the process, you're not going to have the whole club. Just one person running an initiative like this is never going to work because your club is not engaged and is not wanting to do this. So from that process, you sign up to a 2 to 4 month planning process where then you lead into your game. And our secret sauce at Pride Cup is that 2 to 4 months. It's that the organizers and that group all across the club are starting to talk about the game. They're starting to chat about what the game means. They're starting to talk about what they can do. They're starting to be competitive with other leagues who are running the games and wanting to be bigger and better and get the right things going. They're connecting with their local LGBTI organizations, and they're connecting with LGBTI people from their club as well. Sometimes that they didn't know were LGBTI, but are coming out of the woodworks because they're hosting this game. So they started these conversations internally. And that then spreads out, as we know, to the dinner table, to the local cafe, to the local community centre. Once you start these conversations internally, you start talking about what you've been doing during the week, and that goes throughout all communities. So we ask for this 2 to 4 month process for what we call our secret sauce, which is the clubs undertaking this initiative and starting the conversation. Then, just before the game is when we run the education program. The education program, as you said, is usually a one-off program. We escalate it every year as a club grows. So a fifth-year club would not be getting the same education as what a first-year club would get. For a first year, it's very introductory to LGBTI inclusion. And that's where we talk about the stats and share stories about LGBTI people within their sporting code specifically. So what does LGBTI inclusion look like in your sporting code and in your clubs? And using the players and the captains of the teams to also share their experiences as well with the clubs, then builds that relationship further. What that does is it gives the players the knowledge and the awareness of why they're being involved in this game, plus what they've heard over the last 2 to 4 months. And it also gives them a lot of Pride Cups and Pride rounds get immense media coverage compared to other games that they play beforehand. So it also gives them the confidence to be able to answer questions from media, answer questions from the fans of the day, or answer questions from friends and family there. And then it makes them feel more involved. So then the next step is they run that game and they run that activation. When they're running the activation, they're as equipped as possible being as part of that activation. They've had 2 to 4 months to say no to running it. They had 2 to 4 months to learn and to ask all questions they need. So when they're running the game, they're very committed to being there. And look, for me, that's why I think we see a much higher win rate within Pride Cup clubs. So Pride Cup hosting clubs are more likely to win a game. And I just have a little hunch that it's because they're so proud to be part of that, because they've put in all that time, effort, and energy to making this special, that they want to do everything they can to showcase their club.
To get over the line. Yep. I hope Jen's listening and realizing that maybe that's why we won. Can we go back to that point about compliance? And I think this brings us back to the Manly example, to inclusion initiatives that do require compliance from people, whether it be in the sporting environment, wearing the Pride jumper, or whether it be and playing in a Pride Cup, or whether it be in workplaces where we compel people to attend training or be involved in inclusion initiatives. What's your opinion on that?
Look, I think that there's definitely warrants for a lot of quotas and a lot of the things that we've put in, especially when it comes to female engagement and multicultural engagement. And I think sometimes we need to be compliant. I think with a body that's majoritively volunteer-led, as a sporting club is, so taking Manly out of this example, but using community clubs, if for something that is volunteer-run, led, that all those volunteers have their own stories, their own lives, their own understanding of what it means to be LGBTI and have friends, family, kids who are part of that community, that's when it needs to be opt-in, because you want to allow them to start the process themselves and to start on the journey. I don't like that word, but to start on the journey themselves in their own club and to feel compelled that they want to make this a success, not for us to tell them you should make this a success. Because as a volunteer, we know that volunteerism is unfortunately dying out within the Australian community. And we don't want to put more things on somebody's to-do list, but instead we want them to feel engaged and wanting to do this. And as you know from the Pride Cup that you were part of, a lot of the volunteers there were there early in the morning, always there first thing, wanted to be part of this, wanted to showcase what they were doing, and you got more volunteers out of it because they saw the excitement that this game had and they wanted to be part of it. And I don't think you would get that from a compliance-based model. I don't think you'd get that from a forced model, because as humans, innately, we don't want to do what we're told in a lot of the time. So when somebody's telling us to run a diversity and inclusion initiative is when we start getting those questions that are, so when are we going to do a straight round? So when are we going to do all the other things that you can possibly think of, we've been asked. But that's why you allow them to come to the conclusion themselves that they want to run this. And it's usually by seeing another club who's done it and who's done it successfully that then they come and they say, all right, we're ready and we want to do this.
Yeah. And it ends up, when it's done properly, it ends up such a positive thing for everybody, regardless of whether you're LGBTI or not. It's a fun celebration that obviously has a lot of meaning to it, but is also just a great event for a club to hold, right?
Yeah, look, we see clubs get between 2 and 2.5 times the attendance rate of their games that they've had on before. We see them improve their relationships with local councils, with local media organisations, and with local businesses, because it's fun. It's celebratory, it's fun, and it's doing the right thing. And if you can get those three things right, celebration, fun, and doing the right thing, then you're in a good process to grow as a club. And it's what we all need now, let's be honest, Bree.
We do need a bit of fun and rainbows in our lives.
Yes.
That's for sure. All right, I'm going to bring you back though. What about professional sporting clubs? Should those players be, Manly took the stance that said basically you play in this jumper or you don't play this weekend. Is that a reasonable position you think to take?
It would be if there was a longer process that went through, that the club went through, that the association went through. We're working with one of Australia's largest sporting associations at the moment, and we're in our second year of working with them and their clubs on putting together a Pride round. That we still haven't announced it, and we still haven't actually gone the next steps yet, because we're making sure all the players are engaged, all of the clubs are engaged, and everybody knows why they're there, because that's the most important thing. At that stage, once we've gone through that 2-year process and we've consulted with everybody that we need to consult with and who wants to consult with us, once we've answered all the questions that they have, and it's usually just an answer to a question that can change somebody's mind, once we've answered all those questions, that's when we then say, here is the uniform that we decided to play, here's the meaning behind the uniform, here's who created the uniform, here's the story why they created the uniform, and you may choose if you would like to or wouldn't like to participate. If you would not like to participate, you can opt out of that game. And that is something we've seen in the AFLW before, it's something we've seen in the AFL, it's something we're seeing in other sports. In any of our other elite level sports that we've worked with, I'm just thinking back, we haven't seen a player opt out of that because they're given the time, energy, effort that they deserve as players to understand why this is needed. And again, it goes back to that cultural conversation we had at the start, is a lot of people just don't know anybody who's LGBTI or don't know they don't understand that 9 out of 10 gay people don't feel safe or comfortable in a sporting environment and won't come out to be themselves. They don't understand the statistics around trans and GD inclusion in sport and the lack of consultation with the TGD community, and then the lack of people who are actually being part of sporting clubs because of the safety concerns that they have. And they don't understand the history of cultural trauma that the LGBTI community has in sport and how to break that down. And that's why we can see little things happen, and that pulls the LGBTI community offside and doesn't want them to be part of your club anymore. Because it's really important that we approach this in the right manner. We use education as a tool, and we use sport as a tool for the greater good.
And of course, keeping in mind, which I know you do, and I've seen you do this, and also from the practice that I have, is about also taking into consideration those intersectional issues, the intersection of culture, religion, sexuality, gender diversity, the whole gamut of it, and coming to a position where we all realize we all want to be inclusive of each other, and how do we actually make that happen in a practical sense. And
I think you're spot on there. That intersectional approach is, we need to go into everything, especially in the LGBTI community, with that intersectional approach. Because in the LGBTI community, we're not just made up of LGBTI people. Inside of that, there's those who are newly arrived, there's those living with a disability, there's those with religious beliefs that differ from our own. There's a bunch of different intersections within our community that make our community so awesome and so special, and we need to appreciate that. And we need to make sure that we're working alongside those intersections, and have those voices within our conversations so we can make sure we're doing the right thing.
And recognise that there are LGBTIQA plus people who have a Pacifica cultural background too. And our thoughts are with you, because I know that this would be an incredibly challenging time for you and your families. James, we're almost at the 2:30. These go really quick. But thank you so much for having that conversation and providing what I think is just, best practice in this space. And I think it totally translates into the workplace, the approach that you take, that this is about long-term conversations. These are not one-off conversations. We can't come in and run a 1-hour lunch and learn session on LGBTI inclusion and then assume that the organisation is all inclusive and everybody's happy about that. We've got to consider that we have to play the long game in the inclusion space, particularly with the types of commentary and ideas that people are absorbing, particularly recently as that vocal minority make a lot of noise, and really we can counteract that with time and consultation and conversation, as you've articulated. Thanks everybody for tuning in. If you are watching this on the replay, send your comments and your questions, whether it's on LinkedIn or YouTube. My apologies for Facebook. StreamYard's having an issue with Facebook, so we haven't been streaming there, but we'll repost. So if you are watching this on Facebook, apologies for the delay. But tune in. I think next week we'll have another LinkedIn Live. Hopefully, if you are interested in coming on and talking either about this topic or any other inclusion topic, please reach out to me and I'd love to have you on. I recognise that there are lots of great voices in the inclusion space that we haven't given space to yet. So please let me know, or if you want to nominate somebody else or a topic, do that as well. James, enjoy getting back to work on Monday. Thank you for coming on your leave to have this really important conversation. And enjoy your weekend, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, James.